Welcome to Business Boone, hosted by Deep in Talent Strategies and brought to you from the Crossroads of America. This episode is powered by Boone REMC, and I'm Shauna Lake, founder of Deep in Talent Strategies and a proud member of the Boone County Chamber. We are here today to talk about the intersections of business, leadership, and the community here in Boone County and beyond.
I am Lauren Byram, also with Deep in Talent Strategies and co-host of Business Boone. Sean and I have been talking about wanting to do a podcast for a few years now, and simultaneously we've been attending and co-hosting programming sessions with the Boone County Chamber. And in the second half of 2024, we began talking about partnering with the Boone County Chamber and our guest today, Sean Reaves, about converting one of the programmings into the podcast series. So welcome, Sean, who is the Executive Director of the Boone County Chamber. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and really excited to partner on this podcast. Excited that you ladies are going to host, and I get to be behind the scenes usually, helping put it all together. But really excited about what we're embarking on.
So, Sean, could you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, the Boone County Chamber, and talk to our listeners about what that they can expect from the podcast? Can you tell us a little bit first about the mission and the vision of the Boone County Chamber?
Yeah. So I've been with the Chamber for about a year and a half now, and Boone County is growing extremely rapidly. We've got tremendous growth in multiple areas, and for me, when we talk about what the Chamber does and our mission, our tagline, I think, sums it up best. And it's connecting communities, advancing businesses. And I think that's really important. And when I think about what a modern chamber in a growing, growing community like Boone County is doing, it's those connections and the people piece of it that is really exciting to me. And that's what I enjoy. How this kind of happened, Deep in Talent Strategies was sponsoring one of our programs, and we were talking about how do you expand the reach of that program. So because we would have really, a great speaker or a really strong panel discussion, and I'd be like, I wish everybody could see this. And then it kind of hit me, well, it's not like podcasts are new or cutting edge anymore. So what if, and originally I said, well, what if we filmed them? And I always feel like that's a tough thing to do, live audience and the audio and that. And I said, what if we could really do it where we could, cultivate a series, and sometimes it might be a couple people speaking that are from the same or different organizations on the same topic. It could also be, just a one-on-one. And so that's what I got excited about. And so it just made sense to come back to our partners on that program and say, would you want to partner with us on it? And that's kind of how this all got rolling. And then we were lucky enough to bring Ash Interactive, who are the folks producing this podcast, and get them involved as well. Yeah.
That's great. And it's been a lot of fun. And so thank you for approaching us with this opportunity. And I love the mission of the Chamber and advancing business and linking community. What does that mean to you? And when you've been out in the community in your role as executive director, what are the common themes and issues that you're seeing as executive director in this fast-growing county?
What's interesting when you say what's it mean? So when I came on board as a chamber director, I kind of did what I almost call a listening tour, where I went to a lot of our members, introduced myself, set up meetings, and just said, what are you looking for? Why did you join the chamber? And what I found was there were a lot of different reasons people were joining. And we have, the first new membership after I'd come on board was I started on a Monday. It was on a Friday. Actually, they called on a Tuesday, and it was the Boone County Cake Company, which is this amazing little pastry shop off of the square in Lebanon, owned by John and Stephanie Kim, great folks. And they went into business for themselves, but really small, mom and pop operation, right? But if you've not been there, it is amazing. They have cocktails too. So if you like cocktails and cake, you're winning right there, But so we have a business like that, which at that point was two people. Like they were doing it themselves. They've now hired some staff, and because they're so busy all the time. And then the next membership was the Eli Lilly and Company, which is, a global drug manufacturer and, in the pharma industry. And so you don't get much different from that. So the reason why Eli Lilly and Company joined the chamber and John and Stephanie from Boone County Cake Company joined the chamber are two totally different things. So it's hard to find that thread sometimes of what everybody's joining for. But what I continue to see when I talk to people, no matter the size of the company, was getting that community connection. We want to feel like you're part of the business community in Boone County. And so I said, that's where that connecting communities piece comes in, and you hear about it repeatedly. And I would say a huge part of my job is when someone like Shauna might say, hey, Sean, I heard you talk about so-and-so. Can you connect me? I'd love to talk to them about a project we have going on. And typically, to be honest with you, it's more often the other way where people ask me about Shauna and say, hey, you talk about Shauna Lake. Can you get me connected to her? We have a project I'd like to talk to her about or like to get her feedback on. And so that's what I really enjoy. When I get to get two people, put them together, and I always leave those e-introductions or personal introductions together, I always say, I'm going to let you two take it from here. Let me know if I can continue to help you find a way to foster a partnership, and it's not just about business always. Sometimes it's just about that personal relationship, or sometimes it's, hey, we're in a common business. What have you learned, or some things like that. So it's just really, a unique job to have. And I have found it so incredibly rewarding at this point in my life to be able to do that. So,
Thank you. Also, that's great.
So 6 months from now, 12 months from now, what would success look like to you for this podcast and for Business Boom?
Gosh, when I think about when we first started thinking about the podcast, if it was to mimic some of the programming that we do in the chamber, we have a lot of great programs. Our Women in Business program, our Executive Exchange program, the Culinary Collective, which is for restaurants, all these different programs we do. We try to hit on three things, and it's usually engage, educate, and enrich. And if we hit on those three rails, we're probably going to be pretty successful, right? And so we want that. We want something that everybody can, get educated from. You leave with something, a tip, hey, a lesson, something that you didn't know. Want to engage, you want it to be entertaining. People want to enjoy it. We hopefully free-flowing conversations. It's not too rehearsed, because the more rehearsed it is, I think the less authentic it feels for people.
Sure.
And so, and then the engagement piece is that you would come back and say, let me learn more about Boone County. Let me learn more about deep in talent strategies. Hopefully let me learn more about the chamber, and maybe let's sign up for a membership. I don't know. We'll come to a program.
Just drop that in there.
Yeah. But then the bigger picture is we're talking about Boone County, Central Indiana. But I would hope that, and knowing what the next 5 episodes are about, they would really be pertinent and exciting and interesting to anybody who's not only in Boone County or in Central Indiana or in the Midwest, but really across the country. I won't say globally, because we're talking, a lot of it's going to be, stuff that is going to be more pertinent in, the U.S. But I do think it could be something that you might end up stumbling upon this podcast on accident and be in Kansas and go, oh, they're talking about mental health in the workplace. I want to know more about that. Or they're talking about workplace trends, and we're dealing with people returning back to work from being at home, working from home, and those sort of things. So I think there's just a lot to learn from there. The other thing I would ask is, what do you think about when you think about this podcast down the line? What are your hopes and dreams for it?
Well, I certainly agree with everything that you said. In addition to a wide variety of topics and a broad geographic reach, because we are in the crossroads of America, as we say, but the topics don't have to be specific to Central Indiana. I hope that listeners find our topics interesting at all levels of an organization: C-suite, director level, manager, individual contributor, and nonprofit leaders.
Yeah.
So I hope that we're attracting and we're interesting to a wide variety of professionals.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think those are, as the podcast grows, I think the other really exciting thing that we can do is, because we are a small podcast, if a listener heard something and said, they talked about this, but I would have loved for them to dive in, take it this way a little bit. And that happens sometimes. Let us know. We would love to hear about a topic you want to hear about, because the great thing is we're pulling a lot of our experts and guests from Central Indiana, specifically from Boone County, hopefully, and knowing that there is going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to get there. There's a wealth of knowledge here, and so we can pull those folks in and get the content that someone may really be interested in hearing about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there might be some topics that are specific to small businesses, but maybe also businesses that are on the cusp of explosive growth and everything in between.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Before I hand it back over to Shauna, I would love to know, if money and space and time were no object, who would be your ideal person to have on the show?
Gosh, that's a really good question, because so I'm a podcast fan. So, but my podcast, I do listen to some business. I do listen to some what I would call lifestyle podcasts. I'm a big entertainment junkie. So like one of my favorite podcasts is The Town, which talks about the entertainment industry. I find it interesting to me.
Yeah.
Huge sports fan. I love anything Bill Simmons does and in that space. So I'm kind of all over the board as for my likes and stuff. But for me, like the crossover of this being a business podcast, and also I'm a huge sports fan, big NBA fan, and I'm a Pacers fan, but just knowing being business and NBA, I would love to have Mark Cuban as a guest. That would be the one thing that would just, blow my mind.
He's the Hoosier.
He is a Hoosier. He went to IU. He is active was an NBA owner. He did sell his portion of the team, but he's still acting as basically the president of the organization, I believe. But the fact that he has Hoosier connection and a connection to the Crossroads of America, and then grew his business, and then also, just the Shark Tank stuff is so interesting to me. I think it's so fun. So that would probably be the one. If it was just totally entertainment. I could name many people, but I think Kevin Smith is a really interesting director, and loved a lot of his work. So there's stuff like that I would like. But in the business world, would probably be Mark Cuban. So yeah,
Interesting.
It's good to know that Boone REMC is always there. For generations, we've powered the growth of our neighborhoods, businesses, and everything in between. Today, our commitment is stronger than ever to provide affordable energy you can depend on and keep you connected to what matters most, now and for generations to come. Boone REMC is a Touchstone Energy Cooperative, your source for power and information.
So we plan to ask all of our guests, and you're the first guest of the first episode, so you get to go first.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you wish that you had known earlier in your career?
Gosh. There's a list, and then you turn the page and there's another list. But I think the big thing for me, where I've grown as a leader and as a person, is to be a better listener. Your opinion does not need to be told all the time. And I'm not saying you should suppress your opinion, but I think as I was coming up in the business world, there were times that it probably stemmed from like false bravado or like insecurity, like in my own skill set, to where I'm going to prove to you that I know this, so I'm going to over speak and give you my opinion on everything. And I honestly think that sometimes sitting in the room and being quiet and being a good listener and truly listening, is some of the best leadership you can have. Really listen to what a person's telling you. I had a really bad habit, not only in business, but in personal life sometimes too, of, especially in uncomfortable conversations, I would always be thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to say versus truly listening to what that person's trying to tell me. And I was actually talking to my daughter recently, and there were so many things I wanted to tell her about it. We were having a pretty deep conversation. And at that moment, I'm thinking, and I said, quit thinking about what you're trying to say to her and just listen to what she's trying to tell you. And so that's what I try to live. I'm not always, still to this day, not the best at it, but there were definitely times in my life where I just wasn't a great listener and overspoke or kind of forced my, we have to do it this way. And it just doesn't have to always be that way. I think one other thing that comes to my mind that I wish I would have known as well as it's okay not to be confident. It's okay to admit, I don't know that. And I think it's actually to be vulnerable with what you're not the best at and being okay with it. Sometimes I think we are so worried to say, to come across as weak or as, not being knowledgeable on one thing. It's okay to say, I don't know that. And there's sometimes when you'll be having a conversation with someone and they'll just assume you know something. And be like, well, you know it, and they'll just go on it. And I think it's okay to say, back up for a second. I don't know that. I deal with a ton of banks in the chamber. We have a lot of banks. And they throw around a lot of acronyms. And I think they assume because I'm at the chamber that I know about this loan program or this or that, and I just will say, I don't. And please educate me. I want to learn, but I don't want to just assume. I don't want to act like I know what you're talking about because I am totally clueless on that right now. And I think that's important to be able to do that. And I actually think it shows more strength to be vulnerable. But I learned that lesson at soon to be 51. Probably I didn't learn it that, but I'm comfortable being, hey, I don't know that. Tell me more about it. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I hope people heard you and maybe they shortened their learning curve a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
Great.
So what's one thing our listeners, many of whom are business leaders or owners, can do right now to make a positive impact either in their business or in the community?
Yeah. So I'm going to take the chamber twist on them. And we recently had our member breakfast, which is our big annual breakfast. Mm-hmm. And Boone County is growing. It's growing rapidly. Central Indiana is growing. I mean, we're just seeing tremendous growth. And one of the things, so I had my 1-year anniversary with the chamber back in July, and we had 100 new businesses join the chamber in the 1 year that I was there. I actually pulled up the report on my day, and I knew we were close to 100, and I was like, oh, I'm glad we got that last one. I hit the 100. That's great, and so it's super exciting, and you see that growth, and you're like, wow, your chamber's thriving, and your community's thriving. And I think that's wonderful. And the member breakfast was, I think, a really great example of that, because 2 years ago they had 70 people there. Last year we had 100 people there. This year we had 162 people signed up, and we had a few no-shows, which always happens, but probably a good thing because I probably oversold it more than than the airplane booking of we'll have enough seats. The piece of people who didn't show up. So you see that growth, and that's great, and that's exciting. But you have to get engaged. If you're going to pay for a chamber membership and invest in your organization and say, we want to be a part of the Boone County Chamber, I want you to get engaged. And there's, in the middle of my career, I had been in the profit world for a long time. And I kind of had not a crisis of faith. I didn't change that, but I didn't want to be in the profit world anymore for a while. And I was kind of burned out. Had been a recruiting director for a long time and was burned out on that world. And so I said, let me do something different. I ended up working at the YMCA of Greater Indianapolis for 10 years. And I equate this because I say sometimes the chamber's all like the Y. And when I first started at the Y, I worked at a brand new Y, and I was the membership director. And we would have people join, and then they would come back and they would, drop their membership, and they said, I just didn't use it. Well, that's really, the act of joining the Y, and I say this as a guy who's carrying around a few extra LBs, but the act of joining the Y, or any gym for that matter, is a great first step to getting healthy. It's a great, hey, this is the first step. I gotta get off the couch first. But if you don't actually use your membership, you really haven't accomplished anything but give them your money.
Sure.
The chamber works the same way. If you join the chamber and you sign up, you go on our website, you go into our directory, and that's great. There's some marketing to that. But if you don't actually get out and come to our networking events and come to our programs and listen to this awesome podcast, then you're really not benefiting from it. And so that's what I would say is get engaged, come out. And that engagement doesn't always have to be through the chamber. It's getting involved in your community, letting people know who you are. That would be one. And then two, and we're going to have a later session about this, talking about storytelling, but especially for new businesses and small businesses, not just your product that you're selling, but what is your story? Because people want to know the story of your business. And I think that's an important step that people miss sometimes. It seems like they may have a great product or a great service, but they don't know how to tell their story to let people know what that product or service is and why they need it. So I would say for those small businesses or entrepreneurs that are just starting, gosh, having that piece is so incredibly important. And if you miss out on that, you're making your journey harder at the beginning than you probably need to.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about building those relationships.
Yeah.
So we want people to join or connect and actually use their membership. So what is the best way for people to learn more about the chamber and to connect with you?
Yeah. So our website is boonechamber.org. My email address is Sean, Sean, the traditional Irish spelling. Sean, Sean, at boonechamber.org, and reach out. Anybody who wants to meet with me, I'm always open to, I've got a busy schedule, but if someone emails me and says, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this, I'm always open. I like doing it in-person meetings. I much prefer let's grab coffee than I do a Zoom meeting or anything else. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's the only option, but I would really prefer to meet a person in person and just chat with them. And I love hearing their stories. I mean, that's been the most rewarding piece, not only connecting with people and connecting people in the community, but also like getting to hear the stories of this is my business and this is why I'm passionate about it, in all different sizes. We have a new member that she is making her own protein bars. It's called Tin Bar, and they're gluten-free. They are, and all these things. And so to get to hear her story and why that's important to her and why that's super exciting to me. And getting to see her journey of getting it originally had to be refrigerated. Now it's shelf safe and those sorts of stories, or like the different, like we have a coffee roaster, and that's Julian's Coffee, and getting to hear their story and what's important to them. I think that's so cool. And then connecting those two and saying, well, could you sell your bars here, and doing those things. It's really neat to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty healthy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sean, thanks for joining us. Kicking off the podcast, so Business Boone, the first episode. We're very excited for the future conversations that we're going to have with our guests. Thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to many more insightful conversations. In the meantime, please continue to grow and learn with purpose.